At my late husband Arthur's home, his daughter Serena told me I was too old for his millions. With my stepson Julian silently watching, she demanded I sign away my inheritance for a senior community. They thought I was a naive widow. I simply smiled. They had no idea the fight they were about to face. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. We appreciate your likes, shares, and comments as we dive into this unexpected turn of events. The scent of pipe tobacco and old books still clung to Arthur's study, a bittersweet reminder of his presence, even days after the funeral. I found solace there, surrounded by the leather-bound volumes he loved, the worn armchair where he often read aloud to me. My grief was a heavy cloak, weighing down my every move, muffling the world around me. I was tracing the spine of a first edition, a book he'd given me on our 5th anniversary, when the door creaked open. It wasn't the gentle, respectful knock I expected, but a deliberate push. Serena stood framed in the doorway, her tailored black suit stark against the room's warm tones, her expression a chilling blend of condolence and impatience. Julian, Arthur's son and my stepson, hovered behind her, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the floorboards. Serena didn't waste a moment on pleasantries. Her voice, usually modulated for social gatherings, was sharp, almost clinical. "Eleanor," she began, stepping further into the room. "We need to talk about Arthur's estate." She gestured towards the large mahogany desk, Arthur's domain. Frankly, at 64, with no real experience managing finances of this magnitude, we're concerned. $53 million is a substantial sum, far too much for someone, well, like you. The insult hung in the air, thick and acrid. Like me. The implication was clear. Old, frail, incompetent. I felt my hands clench, but my voice remained steady, if a little breathy. The exact figure of Arthur's wealth, spoken so casually, was jarring. It was a number I'd known in the abstract, but hearing it articulated with such disdain, as if it were a burden I couldn't possibly carry, was a fresh wound. Julian remained silent, a ghost in the periphery. He usually had a quick wit, a ready smile, a kindness that reminded me so much of his father. But now, his gaze was resolutely aimed at the ornate Persian rug, avoiding my eyes as if I were a stranger. The son I had known, the boy I had watched grow into a man, was gone, replaced by a complicit shadow. His silence was a betrayal far deeper than Serena's caustic words, a silent endorsement of her cruelty that stung more than any direct accusation. I felt a cold dread creep into my heart, a sickening realization that I was utterly alone in this room. "This is my home," I whispered, the words barely audible, a desperate attempt to assert my place. My history here. Arthur and I built a life here. Serena, this isn't just a house. It's a testament to our years together. I swept my hand vaguely around the study, encompassing the memories held within its walls. She scoffed, a brittle, dismissive sound. "Playing house, Eleanor, is quite different from managing a multi-million-dollar legacy. You baked cookies and arranged flowers. Arthur managed the actual future." Her words stripped away years of shared laughter, quiet evenings, and collaborative decisions, reducing my life with him to a trivial pastime. It was then Julian finally spoke, his voice low, lacking its usual warmth. "We've discussed it, Eleanor, and we think it's for the best if you sign over your inheritance rights." He wouldn't meet my gaze, instead focusing on the antique globe in the corner of the room. "We've found a wonderful place for you. A comfortable senior community, where all your needs will be met. You'll be safe, secure, no worries." He tried to sound reassuring, but his tone was strained, rehearsed. He spoke as if arranging for a pet, not a person. "A senior community?" I asked, my voice rising slightly, the shock momentarily overriding my grief. "What on earth are you talking about?" The words conjured images of sterile hallways and forced smiles. Julian, still avoiding my eyes, named it. "Sunny Hills. They have excellent activities, bingo nights, craft workshops. You'd love it, bingo nights." My mind reeled. They were proposing to exile me from my home, from the life I knew, to a place where my days would be filled with structured leisure and enforced cheerfulness. It was an appalling suggestion, designed to belittle and dismiss me entirely. Serena stepped forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if sharing a painful secret. Honestly, Eleanor, Arthur wasn't quite himself these past few years. There were moments of confusion, memory lapses. She paused, her gaze piercing. He even called you Margaret once or twice, didn't he? We were genuinely concerned about his judgment. My breath hitched. Margaret was Arthur's first wife, Julian's mother, who had passed away decades ago. To suggest Arthur had been so confused, so detached, that he'd mixed me up with his deceased first wife, was a calculated cruelty, designed to undermine the very foundation of my marriage. It was a vicious lie, a deliberate attempt to erase my existence. Julian, seeing the impact of Serena's words, added his own cutting remark. He even forgot your anniversary last year, didn't he? He thought it was a Tuesday meeting. He tried to make it sound like an innocent slip, but his eyes were hard. It happens to the best of us. I touched the small pearl earrings Arthur had given me on our last anniversary. A gift chosen with such care, a quiet celebration of our enduring love. No, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. He didn't forget. We celebrated quietly, just the two of us. He always remembered. I looked at Julian, hoping to see a flicker of the old affection, but his face remained impassive. Serena, clearly bored with my protests, reached into her large leather bag and pulled out a stack of documents. She placed them on the desk with a decisive slap. These are the papers, a simple transfer of rights. It's for your own protection, Eleanor, and to ensure Arthur's legacy is managed properly, in a way he would have wanted. She pushed the pen across the polished wood. Consider it protection for his good name and for your future security. The implication was clear. If I didn't sign, I would be a threat to both. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. Overwhelmed didn't begin to cover it. The grief for Arthur was still raw, and now, this calculated ambush. Serena had painted a picture of me, a naive, isolated widow, incapable of defending herself, easily manipulated. And the worst part was, in that moment, she almost made me believe it. I felt the weight of their combined gaze, the expectation, the pressure to simply comply. My mind raced, trying to find an anchor in the storm of their accusations and demands. I need time, I stammered, my voice barely audible. To think, to understand all of this. I pushed the papers back slightly, my hand trembling. Serena's eyes narrowed. Time, Eleanor? We've already made arrangements with Sunny Hills. Your room is reserved. The faster we get this settled, the smoother your transition will be. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a veiled threat. A reminder that the wheels were already in motion. That my choice was an illusion. The implication was that any delay would only make things harder for me. As I looked from Serena's cold, determined face to Julian's averted, guilt-ridden profile, a different kind of feeling began to stir within me. This wasn't a sudden reaction to Arthur's death. This was planned. This had been brewing. How long? How long had Julian and Serena been plotting my displacement? My removal from Arthur's life. Even before he was gone, the thought sent a chill down my spine, deeper than the grief, colder than the betrayal. Yet, despite the fear, despite the overwhelming feeling of being cornered, a small, stubborn voice spoke within me. It was Arthur's voice, clear and strong, reminding me of his love, his meticulous nature. A nagging feeling, a deep intuition, told me that Arthur would never have left me defenseless. He knew me better than that. He loved me more than that. He would have prepared. He would have protected me. This gut feeling, this spark of defiance, was the only thing that kept me from crumbling. 3 sleepless nights later, the memory of Serena and Julian's ambush still haunted me, intertwining with the ache of Arthur's absence. The house felt vast and empty, each room echoing with the silence he left behind. I found myself drawn to Arthur's bedroom, a sanctuary of shared moments now steeped in unbearable grief. His scent, a comforting mix of his aftershave and the lingering aroma of the books he often read in bed, still lingered on his side of the mattress. I ran my hand over the cool linen, a silent tribute to our life together. Feeling an overwhelming wave of sadness wash over me, my eyes scanned the familiar surroundings, seeking any small comfort, a tangible link to him. I remembered he often misplaced his reading glasses, tucking them away in the most peculiar places. A faint hope sparked within me that finding them might offer a tiny connection, a whisper of his everyday habits. I opened his nightstand drawer, a space I rarely intruded upon, and my fingers brushed against something hard and metallic beneath a stack of old letters. It wasn't his glasses. I pulled it out, a small, sleek digital recorder, the kind Arthur used for dictating notes or reminders. My heart hammered against my ribs. Arthur was meticulous, deliberate. This wasn't random. With trembling fingers, I pressed the play button. The room, which had been so silent moments before, was suddenly filled with Arthur's voice. It was clear, yet tinged with a weakness I hadn't fully recognized in his last days, a subtle frailty that now, in retrospect, was heartbreakingly evident. "Eleanor," he began, and the sound of my name from his lips, even recorded, sent a shiver through me. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone, and I suspect they've started their games." My breath hitched. He knew. All this time, he knew. Arthur's voice continued, a testament to his foresight and his unwavering love. He explained that Julian and Serena had been making increasingly bold moves, their greed overshadowing any semblance of familial affection. He detailed how he had observed their manipulations, the subtle shifts in their behavior, the thinly veiled questions about his health and his will. He revealed that he had been taking steps, quiet and deliberate, to protect me, to ensure their schemes would fail. "Don't sign anything, Eleanor," his voice cautioned, firm despite its underlying weakness. "Not a single document they put in front of you." He then gave a specific instruction, a lifeline from beyond the grave. "Check behind my books on the third shelf in the study. The Hemingway collection. There's something important there. A folder that explains everything." My heart pounded with a mixture of terror and a fierce, burning hope. I practically ran to his study, the room where Serena had delivered her chilling pronouncements just days before. My gaze went directly to the third shelf, to the elegant leather-bound editions of Hemingway. My fingers traced the spines, and then, just as Arthur had instructed, I felt a slight give. Reaching behind the heavy books, I pulled out a thick manila folder, surprisingly heavy. It felt like a treasure chest, or perhaps Pandora's box. I carried it back to the bedroom, needing the comfort of Arthur's space, and sat on the edge of the bed, the folder heavy on my lap. Inside, neatly organized and meticulously labeled, were documents that laid bare the shocking depth of Julian and Serena's deception. The first set of papers were bank statements, a damning trail of unauthorized personal loans Julian had been taking from Arthur's various accounts. The total amount was staggering, nearly $500,000, siphoned off over the past 2 years, growing bolder and more frequent as Arthur's health began to decline. It was a cold, calculated theft from his own father. Below the bank statements were printed emails, a chilling correspondence between Julian and Serena. The old man's getting suspicious. One email from Julian read, dated just a few months prior. He asked about the quarterly withdrawals from the investment fund. "We need to speed up the timeline." Serena's reply was equally ruthless. "Agreed. His memory is getting worse. We just need to push him over the edge. You need to be more convincing about his forgetfulness." The words hit me like physical blows, confirming my deepest fears, turning the vague suspicions into concrete, undeniable proof. Further emails from Serena detailed an even more insidious plot. She had systematically been using my own credit card, not for her personal gain, but to create a false trail of irresponsible spending. Small, seemingly innocuous purchases, but numerous, designed to appear excessive and erratic. Her plan was to make it seem as though I was draining Arthur's accounts with my extravagance, subtly creating a narrative of financial recklessness to justify their takeover. She wanted Arthur to believe I was incapable of managing money, a reckless spendthrift. Then I found a series of photographs. They showed me, laughing, at a garden party with Beatrice, Arthur's longtime housekeeper and friend. In several of the photos, I was talking animatedly with Beatrice's brother, who had accompanied her that day. Serena had circled him in red pen, scrawling Eleanor's intimate male friend across the bottom of the prints. My stomach churned. It was a vile attempt to paint me as unfaithful, to poison Arthur's mind against me with fabricated evidence of an affair. The accompanying emails from Serena outlined the full scope of her plan, to convince Arthur that I was not only financially irresponsible and unfaithful, but also exhibiting signs of dementia. She had researched Alzheimer's symptoms, detailing how to subtly introduce doubts about my mental faculties. Julian, one email read, "You need to plant seeds of doubt. Ask her if she remembered that conversation or that event. Feign concern. Make him question her state of mind." Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. The painful, confusing memories from the past few months making horrifying sense. Serena's seemingly concerned questions. "Did you remember what Arthur said about the trust fund? Eleanor, you looked a little distracted. Or, are you sure you put your keys there? You were just holding them a minute ago." And her frequent, gentle suggestions. Perhaps a visit to Dr. Evans would be wise, just to rule out anything serious. You know, for peace of mind. Each interaction, once seemingly innocent, was now revealed as a calculated act of psychological warfare, designed to erode Arthur's trust in me, and mine in myself. But the most devastating discovery was saved for last. A summary document, meticulously typed, outlining their ultimate goal: to have me declared incompetent, to strip me of my rights, and to confine me to a nursing home. Sunny Hills, not for my comfort, as Julian had claimed, but for my forced removal. A final solution to their Eleanor problem. They intended to lock me away, silence me, and seize everything Arthur had built. My hands shook so violently that the papers slipped to the floor. The cold reality of their ambition, their utter ruthlessness, left me gasping for air. Arthur's voice, from the grave, had saved me. The realization of the full scope of Serena and Julian's plot left me physically ill. My stomach churned, and a cold sweat broke out on my skin. It wasn't just about the $53 million, not just about stealing Arthur's legacy. This was an attempt to erase me, to deny my very sanity, to strip me of my identity and my freedom. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. They didn't just want my inheritance. They wanted to lock me away, to silence me permanently, to ensure I couldn't expose their crimes. The thought made me gag, a bitter taste rising in my throat. My trembling hands returned to the folder, eager to find any other damning piece of evidence, any shred of truth that Arthur might have hidden for me. Beneath the phony credit card statements and the maliciously doctored photographs, I discovered another set of printed emails. These were between Serena and a doctor, Elias Vance, a name that sent a jolt of recognition through me. Dr. Vance was a prominent psychiatrist, known for his specialization in elderly mental health and cognitive decline. The sheer audacity of Serena contacting such a professional, without my knowledge, was horrifying. The first email from Serena to Dr. Vance was dated 3 months prior, written in a tone of feigned concern, laced with calculated urgency. "Dear Dr. Vance," it began, "I am writing to you regarding my stepmother, Eleanor Vance. Recently, her family, including myself and my brother Julian, have become increasingly worried about her well-being. She has been exhibiting signs of significant confusion and memory loss, often forgetting important appointments or conversations. We believe a professional evaluation is urgently needed for her own safety and future care." My blood ran cold as I read her carefully constructed lies. She had crafted a narrative of my supposed mental decline, painting me as a vulnerable, forgetful woman, spiraling into incompetence. Dr. Vance's reply was professional and concise, requesting more specific information. "Thank you for reaching out, Miss Vance," his email stated. "To assist with a comprehensive evaluation, I would require documented evidence of the instances you've observed, such as specific examples of forgetfulness, confusion, or behavioral changes. Detailed records would be invaluable. His request, entirely standard for such a sensitive assessment, was a professional formality. But Serena's response to him revealed her true, chilling intent. "Doctor," she wrote back, her tone now bordering on triumphant. "We've been keeping detailed records for months. Julian and I have documented every instance of Eleanor's lapses in memory, her inexplicable confusion, and her increasingly erratic behavior. We have dates, times, and specific anecdotes. We believe this evidence will clearly demonstrate her need for immediate intervention and a controlled environment." Her words echoed in my mind, a terrifying echo of the conversations she'd engineered, the subtle traps she'd laid for me. The detailed records she boasted about were manufactured lies, carefully constructed to portray me as mentally declining, a fragile woman losing her grip on reality. A sickening clarity washed over me as I understood her insidious methods. I remembered conversations, seemingly innocent at the time, now replaying with a sinister edge. Serena would tell me about an upcoming doctor's appointment, giving me a specific time and day. Later, she would casually ask me about the appointment, and when I, having relied on her initial information, might mention a slightly different detail or hesitate, she would feign concern. "Oh, Eleanor, are you sure? I distinctly remember telling you it was Tuesday at 2. Are you feeling all right?" She would then, I now realized, meticulously document my confusion, twisting my momentary uncertainty into proof of cognitive impairment, or she would invent a fabricated conversation. "Remember when Arthur and I discussed selling that property in Vermont last week? Eleanor? You seemed so keen on the idea." I would rack my brain, trying to recall such a discussion, knowing it hadn't happened. My blank look, my hesitant denial, would then be documented as memory loss or disorientation. She was actively feeding me misinformation, setting me up to fail, and then using my perfectly normal reactions to her lies as evidence against me. My head swam with these revelations, each memory a fresh stab of pain and outrage. It became terrifyingly clear. Had Arthur not left these documents, had I not stumbled upon them, I would have walked blindly into Serena and Julian's trap. I would have been declared incompetent, stripped of my rights, and confined to a nursing home, my protests dismissed as further evidence of my deteriorating mental state. My entire future, my freedom, my very identity, hung by the slender thread of Arthur's foresight. The thought sent a shiver of terror down my spine, a visceral understanding of how close I had come to losing everything. My initial hurt and anger at their betrayal began to solidify into something colder, sharper, a clear, unyielding rage. They hadn't just sought to steal money. They had systematically tried to destroy my reputation, my sanity, my very essence. They had plotted to erase me from existence, to make me a prisoner in my own mind. And then, in their care, this wasn't just a squabble over inheritance. This was a calculated, heinous crime. A profound abuse of trust. The sheer malice of their actions was breathtaking, but amidst the churning anger, a powerful sense of validation emerged. Arthur had known. The digital recorder, his voice echoing from the grave, was irrefutable proof. He had seen through their charade, uncovered their game, and taken steps to protect me. He hadn't been confused or unaware. He had been silently building my defense. This knowledge, that Arthur had seen their true colors and had fought for me even in his dying days, was a powerful force. It propelled me to search further, to delve deeper into the folder, certain that Arthur, in his methodical way, would have left me even more clues, more weapons to wield in the battle that was inevitably coming. The fight was far from over. The cold, determined rage that now simmered within me fueled a new kind of clarity. Arthur's voice from the recorder, the damning evidence in the folder. It was all part of a larger picture, a masterful plan he had orchestrated even as his life ebbed away. He wouldn't have just left me with proof. He would have left me with solutions. My gaze fell upon Arthur's expansive closet, a sanctuary of impeccably tailored suits and polished leather shoes. It was a place he frequented daily. A space of quiet routine. If there was more, it would be there. My fingers traced the mahogany paneling at the back of the closet, a faint intuition guiding me. After a moment, my touch found a subtle seam, a barely perceptible join in the wood. Pushing gently, a section of the panel slid inward with a soft click, revealing a small, steel safe embedded in the wall. My heart leaped. This was it. Arthur was a man of tradition, of sentimentality hidden beneath a practical exterior. I knew the combination immediately. Our wedding date, inscribed in Roman numerals on the inside of his wedding band, a secret only we shared. With trembling fingers, I input the numbers. The heavy bolt disengaged with a satisfying thud. Inside, nestled on a velvet lining, was a single, cream-colored envelope, addressed to my dearest Eleanor. His familiar, elegant handwriting instantly brought tears to my eyes, but beneath the grief, a surge of strength propelled me forward. Alongside the letter were several business cards, neatly clipped together. They were for 3 different law firms, none of which belonged to the established family attorney Julian had so casually referenced. Arthur, ever the strategist, had anticipated every move. I carefully opened the envelope, unfolding the thick, heavy stationery. Arthur's words, written with his distinctive fountain pen, filled the page. "My dearest Eleanor," the letter began, exactly as his recorded message had started. "If you're reading this, it means you found the evidence of their betrayal. I knew you would, my clever wife. I always told you that you were smarter than you let on." A bittersweet smile touched my lips. He always saw past my quiet demeanor, recognizing the steel beneath. He went on to explain, in his typically precise manner, that he had been aware of Julian and Serena's manipulations for nearly a year. Their greed, he wrote, began to eclipse their discretion, subtle at first, then increasingly blatant. I saw the way they looked at you, at me, at our life together, as merely an obstacle to their ambitions. He detailed how he had watched them, allowed them to believe their schemes were working, all while he quietly gathered intelligence. He revealed that he had hired a private investigator months ago, not just to confirm his suspicions but to meticulously document every single one of their illicit activities. The unauthorized transfers, the fabricated credit card spending, the concerted efforts to portray me as mentally unsound. The next paragraph made my jaw drop. "They believe they know the terms of my will, based on the draft from 5 years ago." "They are mistaken," Arthur wrote, his words practically crackling with quiet triumph. "I changed my will 6 months ago, without telling a soul. I set up protections for you, for our legacy, that Julian and Serena know absolutely nothing about." The sheer brilliance of his foresight, his meticulous planning, took my breath away. He had played a long game, a game of chess where his opponents were oblivious to his every move. "They think I was a confused old man," Arthur continued, his words mirroring the very accusations Serena had leveled against me. "They reveled in my forgetfulness, my lapses in judgment. I let them think that. Eleanor, I encouraged it. It allowed me to observe them, to gather the evidence, and to put my final plans into motion without alerting their suspicions. He hadn't been a victim of their manipulation. He had masterfully feigned it, using their arrogance and greed against them. He had created the perfect smokescreen, allowing them to expose themselves, while he quietly built an impenetrable fortress around me. It was then I truly understood. Arthur hadn't been just protecting me. He had been playing a game, a high-stakes chess match with his own children. And he had been several moves ahead the entire time. The memory lapses, the confusion Serena and Julian had so gleefully documented, were nothing more than a carefully crafted performance, a brilliant deception designed to lull them into a false sense of security. My husband, the quiet, principled man I adored, had been a master strategist, a silent warrior in his final months. The letter concluded with a clear directive, a final, unequivocal command from the man who loved me more than life itself. "Don't sign anything, Eleanor, no matter what they say or threaten, until you meet with my attorney, David Miller. His business card is among the others. He knows everything. Trust him, Eleanor, and trust the plan we made together. We will ensure justice is served, and you are protected, exactly as I intended." The letter ended with a simple, yet profound, "All my love, always, Arthur." For the first time since Arthur's death, a powerful, radiant warmth spread through my chest. chasing away the cold despair that had gripped me. It wasn't just hope. It was a profound sense of vindication, of empowerment. Arthur hadn't left me defenseless. He hadn't abandoned me to the mercy of his rapacious children. He had crafted a shield, a weapon, and a clear path forward. Julian and Serena, in their arrogance, had underestimated everything. Arthur's intelligence, his love for me, and the depths of his foresight. They thought they were playing a game against a grieving widow and a dying old man. They had no idea they were about to face the full force of Arthur's brilliant legacy, and a wife more determined than they could ever imagine. The battle was about to begin. And I, armed with Arthur's love and his meticulous planning, was ready. Want to know how Arthur outsmarted his greedy children? Stay tuned. Like, share, and subscribe to unravel this intricate web of deception with me. Armed with Arthur's letter and a new sense of purpose, I made my way to David Miller's office, nestled in a discreet building downtown. It wasn't a flashy, corporate high-rise, but a more understated establishment. The brass plaque by the door, Miller and Associates, Elder Law and Estate Protection, instantly signaled its specialization. Inside, the waiting area was simple, yet welcoming, with brochures advocating for the rights of seniors and warnings against financial exploitation. It was clear this firm stood for justice, a stark contrast to the predatory motives of Julian and Serena. David Miller was younger than I had anticipated, perhaps in his late 30s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a calm, reassuring demeanor. He rose from his desk as I entered his office, extending a hand. "Mrs. Thornton, it's a privilege to finally meet you. Arthur spoke highly of you, often." His voice was gentle, and a ghost of a smile played on his lips. "He knew you'd come. He said you were a woman of great strength, and he trusted you completely to follow his instructions." His words brought a fresh wave of grief, but also a deep sense of validation. Arthur had believed in me, even when others sought to diminish me. My first question, though, was urgent. "How long, Mr. Miller? How long have you known about Julian and Serena's intentions?" David sighed, settling back into his chair. "Arthur first contacted me 8 months ago. Mrs. Thornton, he had already begun to suspect their motives, noticing irregularities in his accounts and overheard conversations. He came to me not as a confused old man, but as a brilliant strategist, concerned for your future." 8 months. That meant Arthur had been aware, calculating, and planning for nearly a year before his death. Playing a silent, deadly game, while his children believed they were manipulating him. David then gestured to a thick file on his desk, its label stark. "Thornton Estate Confidential." He opened it, revealing a meticulously organized collection of documents, just like the one Arthur had left for me, but far more extensive. "Everything Arthur suspected, everything he documented for you," David explained. "We have independently corroborated and expanded upon. Julian's unauthorized personal loans were only the beginning. His greed ran much deeper." He went on to reveal the extent of Arthur's preparatory work. Arthur didn't just suspect. He investigated. He hired a private investigator, a formidable woman named Amy Lee, a former FBI agent specializing in fraud and elder abuse. Miss Lee has been documenting every single detail: the financial theft, the psychological manipulation, the plans to have you declared incompetent. Every email, every phone call, every suspicious interaction Julian and Serena had was recorded and analyzed. My heart pounded. Arthur had truly built an impenetrable fortress of evidence. David then turned his computer screen towards me. "This," he said, his voice grave, "is a photograph taken by Miss Lee. It's dated the day after Arthur received his final, devastating diagnosis." The image showed Serena and Julian, glasses of champagne raised, a triumphant, almost gleeful expression on their faces. They were toasting, not to their father's life, but to his impending death. The sheer callousness of it made my breath catch in my throat. Then, David pressed play on an audio file. The recording was crystal clear, capturing voices I recognized instantly. Serena's voice, sharp and cold, filled the room. "Finally," she said, a chilling satisfaction in her tone. I was wondering how long we'd have to wait for the old man to keel over. My blood ran cold. The woman who had wept crocodile tears at his funeral, who had offered me insincere condolences, was celebrating his demise. Julian's response was equally chilling. "The timing is perfect," he said, his voice laced with uncharacteristic excitement. "Eleanor's already emotionally fragile. We can use that. She'll be easy to manipulate." He had been watching me, observing my grief, not with empathy, but with predatory calculation. The recording continued, Serena's voice outlining her heinous strategy. "First, we isolate her," she began, her tone chillingly precise. "Make her feel completely alone. Then, we start making her question her own memory, her sanity. Small things, inconsistent information, gaslighting, the very tactics she had employed against me, revealed in her own voice. And once she's sufficiently confused and vulnerable," she continued, "we move in for the kill, declare her incompetent, confine her to a facility like Sunny Hills, and then, Arthur's estate is ours, free and clear." My hands clenched into fists, a hot wave of fury washing over me. They had planned to destroy my life, to trap me in a living nightmare. Julian, ever the pragmatist, then raised a point. "What if the old man actually changed his will?" he asked, a flicker of doubt in his voice. "Could we contest it? Claim he was incompetent when he made the changes?" Serena laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound that grated on my ears. "Please, Julian," she scoffed. "Arthur wouldn't have done anything that complicated. And even if he did, any last-minute changes would only be seen as further evidence of his mental decline. They'd be easily overturned. With Eleanor declared incompetent, we'd be the sole heirs anyway." David Miller leaned forward, his expression resolute. "They were very confident, Mrs. Thornton," he said, switching off the recording. "Confident in their schemes, confident in their ability to manipulate. But they gravely underestimated your husband. Arthur was never confused. He wasn't suffering from cognitive decline. He was investigating. He was playing them. Every step of the way, the weight of his words settled upon me, a profound vindication. Arthur, my brilliant, loving Arthur, had not just protected me. He had set a trap for his own children, a trap they were about to walk directly into. The game was truly on. I sat in David Miller's office, still trying to process the revelation that Arthur had been investigating, acting. It was difficult to reconcile the image of my sharp, discerning husband with the seemingly confused, forgetful man Serena and Julian had painted, and whom I had, at times, worried about myself. "But, Mr. Miller," I began, my voice laced with lingering doubt. Arthur seemed genuinely confused sometimes. His memory, he would sometimes forget things we'd just talked about, or even seem a little disoriented. David nodded, his expression softening with understanding. "He was a brilliant actor, Mrs. Thornton, and he knew exactly what he was doing." Arthur feigned that confusion precisely to disarm Julian and Serena, to make them overconfident, to allow them to reveal their true intentions without suspicion. He knew they were watching him, evaluating his every move, and he used that to his advantage. He pulled open a large drawer in his filing cabinet. "The proof, Mrs. Thornton, is extensive." He began to lay out a staggering array of evidence, stacks of bank records detailing unauthorized withdrawals, transcripts of phone calls between Julian and Serena where they discussed their nefarious plans, and perhaps most damning of all, video recordings. With Amy Lee's expertise, David explained, Arthur had miniature cameras strategically placed in his study. He recorded nearly every conversation he had with them in that room. He also installed call recorders on his landline and wore a subtle wire during their visits. He was building his case, meticulously, silently. A flood of memories washed over me, each one clicking into place with horrifying clarity. Arthur's frequent naps in his armchair, often when Serena or Julian were visiting, were not actual sleep but strategic moments for the hidden recorder to pick up their unguarded conversations. His repeated questions about dates or names, which I had attributed to age, were often deliberate probes, designed to elicit information or to confirm their manipulative tactics. ensuring every word was caught on tape. The way he would sometimes look at me after a conversation with them, a subtle flicker of something in his eyes, now made perfect sense. He was communicating without words, letting me know he saw through their game. His medication confusion, David continued, mirroring my thoughts, was also an act. He would pretend to mix up his pills, or ask them to remind him of dosages, not because he genuinely forgot, but because it created opportunities for them to reveal more of their plans, to reassure each other that he was indeed slipping. It was a brilliant, albeit heartbreaking, deception. He knew the depths of their depravity, and he used their own greed against them. David explained Arthur's strategy with a solemn respect. He protected you, Mrs. Thornton. By letting Julian and Serena believe they had already won, he allowed them to think they had the upper hand, that he was too weak or too confused to fight back. This complacency was their fatal flaw. Then came the revelations about the will. Regarding Arthur's will, David said, his voice firm, he created multiple versions. The one Julian and Serena are aware of, the one that supposedly leaves most of his estate to them, with provisions for your comfortable senior living at Sunny Hills. That will was a decoy. He paused, letting the words sink in. That will was a lie. A carefully constructed illusion, designed to reinforce their belief that they were in control. The legally binding will, David continued, picking up another folder, was executed 6 weeks before Arthur's passing. He signed it, it was witnessed, and notarized, all under strict legal protocols, ensuring its absolute validity. He pushed the document across the desk to me. This real will contains specific clauses about inheritance, forfeiture for elder abuse, financial exploitation, or manipulation of a testator. Clauses that, given the overwhelming evidence we possess, Julian and Serena have undoubtedly triggered. My hands trembled as I took the document. The language was formal, legal, but the message was crystal clear. Arthur, my Arthur, had seen to everything. David confirmed the devastating blow that was about to land on Julian and Serena, as per Arthur's true last will and testament. He stated, his voice resonating with authority. You, Mrs. Thornton, inherit everything. The house, all investments, his business interests, all $53 million, every single asset Arthur owned, every cent he worked for, is rightfully yours. My eyes scanned the document, my heart soaring with a mixture of relief and awe for Arthur's genius. And then I found the section pertaining to Julian and Serena. David pointed to it. And as for Julian and Serena, he began, his voice taking on a harder edge, they each receive exactly $1. He then pulled out 2 sealed envelopes. Arthur also prepared a letter for each of them, to be delivered with their inheritance. He read from a copy of one. Your greed and cruelty toward my beloved wife, Eleanor, have earned you this inheritance. May it serve as a lasting reminder of your true character. David then delivered the final, crushing blow. And Arthur, in his wisdom, foresaw their potential reaction. If Julian or Serena contest this will, or if they attempt any further harassment or manipulation against you, Mrs. Thornton, then all of the evidence we've amassed, every video, every recording, every bank record, will immediately be turned over to the district attorney's office. Amy Lee has already prepared comprehensive criminal complaints, ready to be filed. They can choose to accept their $1 and disappear, or they can face criminal prosecution for financial fraud and elder abuse. The choice, as Arthur often said, is theirs. The trap was sprung, and Julian and Serena were about to fall right into it. The conference room at David Miller's office felt less like a legal meeting space and more like a carefully staged courtroom. The air was thick with tension, though only I truly understood the underlying currents. I sat quietly, dressed in a simple black dress, doing my best to project the image of a helpless, grieving widow, a persona I knew Serena and Julian expected. My hands were clasped in my lap, my expression demure, concealing the roaring anticipation within. Serena swept in, radiating an air of confident triumph. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored Chanel suit, her face carefully made up, betraying no hint of nerves. Julian, beside her, wore a suit Arthur had bought him just last Christmas. A bitter irony I couldn't help but notice. He, too, wore an expression of eager expectation, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. They took their seats opposite David and me, their gazes occasionally flicking towards me with thinly veiled contempt, confident in their imminent victory. David Miller, ever calm and composed, cleared his throat, breaking the silence. He held a thick document in his hands. "We are here today to read the last will and testament of Arthur Thornton," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "This will was legally executed on February 15th of this year." A small gasp escaped Serena's lips. That was just 6 weeks before Arthur's death. Serena immediately pounced. February 15th? That's when Arthur was already quite ill. We questioned his competency at that time. "Mr. Miller, surely, a man in his condition couldn't have made sound decisions." Her voice was sharp, a barely contained tremor of indignation. David met her gaze unflinchingly. "On the contrary, Miss Thornton, Arthur underwent a comprehensive medical evaluation on February 14th, specifically to establish his mental clarity and capacity to make legal decisions. We have 2 notarized medical certifications from independent neurologists, attesting to his complete competency and lucidity at the time of signing." He gestured to the certifications, neatly placed beside the will. Serena's face tightened, but she remained silent, her eyes darting to Julian, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. David began to read the will, his voice even. He detailed the initial bequests: Arthur's cherished antique pocket watch to his nephew, a collection of rare books to his alma mater, and then, the moment Serena and Julian had been waiting for. "To my beloved wife, Eleanor Thornton," David read, "I bequeath all of my personal effects, the primary residence, and the sum of $500,000. A ripple of satisfaction visibly passed between Serena and Julian. This was exactly what they expected. A comfortable, but not lavish, sum for the helpless widow, leaving the vast bulk of Arthur's $53 million estate for them, his rightful heirs. Serena even offered me a patronizing, pitying glance. My facade held firm. David continued, his tone unwavering. "And to my son, Julian Thornton." He paused, drawing out the moment. "I leave the sum of $1. Julian froze. His smug expression evaporated, replaced by utter disbelief. "What?" he blurted out, his voice a strangled whisper. "Repeat that, please, Mr. Miller. You must have misread." Serena's eyes widened, her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. "This is impossible," she shrieked, a high-pitched sound of outrage. "This will is invalid. Arthur would never do this." David, unperturbed by their outburst, calmly continued. "And to Serena Thornton, wife of my son, Julian Thornton, I leave the sum of $1. Serena shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly across the polished floor. "This is an outrage. Arthur was clearly not of sound mind. He was senile. He was confused. We have ample proof." Her voice was shrill, laced with a venomous fury. "Please, Miss Thornton," David said, his voice firm, "I assure you, Arthur's competency was confirmed. I must ask you to sit down. There is more to read." Serena hesitated. Then, with a glare that could curdle milk, she slowly resumed her seat, her body rigid with indignation. David then read the final, crushing clause. "The remainder of my estate, including all investments, business interests, and any other assets, totaling approximately $52.5 million, I leave entirely to my wife, Eleanor Thornton." A deafening silence descended upon the room. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Julian looked as if he had been physically struck, his face ashen. Serena, however, was past shock and into pure, unadulterated rage. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her eyes bulging with disbelief. It was Victoria, Serena's legal assistant, who finally broke the silence, a hushed whisper escaping her lips. David then picked up Arthur's accompanying letter, the one I had read in the safe, and began to read it aloud. His words meticulously detailed Julian's systematic theft from Arthur's accounts, Serena's calculated credit card fraud designed to frame me, and their sickening plans to have me declared incompetent and confined to a nursing home. With each damning sentence, Julian's complexion grew paler, his hands visibly shaking. Serena's face, however, turned a dangerous shade of crimson. He was paranoid, Julian stammered, his voice weak and trembling. He was deluded. He imagined all of this. I looked at him then, my helpless widow facade dropping completely, replaced by a cold, unwavering gaze. "No, Julian," I said, my voice clear and steady. "He wasn't paranoid. I heard the recordings. I saw the bank statements. I read the emails between you and Serena. Everything you plotted, he knew. Everything you did, he documented," David added to my words, pulling out another piece of evidence. "And he didn't just document, he captured. Here," he said, turning his laptop screen towards them, revealing a high-resolution photograph. It was a candid shot of Julian and Serena, taken just 3 weeks before Arthur's death, standing in front of a real estate office, pointing excitedly at brochures for luxury investment properties. They were already planning how to spend Arthur's money, completely oblivious to the trap he had laid. The image was the final nail in their coffin. Serena, her face a mask of furious disbelief, snatched the photograph from David Miller's hand. "This proves nothing," she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "We were just looking at properties. It's called planning ahead." David remained impassive. "Indeed, Miss Thornton. Planning ahead for Arthur's demise. It would seem. The real estate agent, Miss Jenkins, has already provided a sworn affidavit confirming your $2 million deposit on a commercial property made just 2 weeks before Arthur's death. She also testified to Julian's eagerness to finalize the purchase quickly, mentioning his father's impending health issues that would free up substantial capital." Julian looked physically sick, his face now a ghastly shade of green. He tried to speak, but only a gurgle escaped his throat. We were just being prudent," he stammered, a pathetic attempt at justification. David's gaze hardened. "Prudent, Mr. Thornton? Your activities, as meticulously documented, constitute embezzlement, credit card fraud, and a conspiracy to commit elder abuse, including unlawful confinement. These are serious criminal offenses." He then delivered Arthur's final, devastating blow. "Your father also left explicit instructions. Should either of you choose to contest this will, or should you attempt any further harassment or manipulation of Eleanor, all of the evidence we've amassed will immediately be turned over to the district attorney's office." As if on cue, David added, "Miss Amy Lee, our private investigator, has already prepared comprehensive criminal complaints against both of you. They are ready to be filed at a moment's notice." Serena's eyes, which had been blazing with fury, suddenly widened, a dawning horror creeping into them. She stared at David, then at me, then back at David. "Amy Lee?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The home health aide? The one Arthur hired to help him with his chores?" The pieces clicked into place for her. The realization of who Amy Lee truly was, and what she had been doing. The recordings, the evidence, it had all been gathered by the very person they thought was there to care for Arthur. The irony was exquisite. Julian, ever the weaker of the two, tried one last desperate tactic. "This is extortion," he choked out, his voice thin and reedy. I finally spoke, my voice calm but firm, a stark contrast to their escalating panic. "No, Julian," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "This isn't extortion. This is justice." The helplessness was gone, replaced by an iron resolve. "Arthur gave you a choice. Months ago. You could have chosen compassion, loyalty, integrity. Instead, you chose greed, deception, and cruelty." I paused, letting my words sink in. "Now you have another choice. Accept the $1 inheritance and disappear from my life. Or face criminal prosecution for your actions." Serena was hyperventilating now, clutching her chest. "My rights," she gasped. "We have rights. This is illegal." "Your rights," I retorted, my voice unwavering, "were forfeited the moment you decided to steal from your father, to lie about my mental state, and to plot my confinement. You sought to strip me of my home, my sanity, and my freedom. You have no moral high ground here, Serena, and legally, Arthur ensured you have no ground at all. Julian looked at me then, a flicker of the old boy I remembered in his eyes, a desperate plea for clemency. "Eleanor, please," he whimpered. "We're family. Can't we just work this out? For Arthur's memory?" He sounded like the child he once was, caught in a transgression, but the memories of their betrayal were too fresh, too painful. "Family?" I scoffed softly, shaking my head. "Is that what you called it when you embezzled hundreds of thousands from your father? Is that what you called it? Serena, when you used my credit cards to frame me for reckless spending? Is that what you called it when you plotted to have me locked away, Julian, in Sunny Hills?" My words were daggers, each one hitting its mark. Serena, her face contorted with impotent fury, abruptly stood up once more. "This is a farce. I will not stand for it. We will contest everything. We will tie this up in court for years." "You won't see a penny, Eleanor!" David Miller calmly reached for his phone, his thumb hovering over the dial pad. "Miss Thornton, are you absolutely certain you wish to proceed with that course of action? Shall I call District Attorney Evans right now to inform him of your decision?" Just then, the conference room door opened, and Amy Lee, the private investigator, entered. She was a woman in her late 40s, sharp-eyed and efficient, dressed in a smart pantsuit. She was pushing a large rolling cart, laden with boxes, each one neatly labeled. Financial fraud evidence, audio recordings, video transcripts. She rolled the cart directly between Julian and Serena, its contents a silent, undeniable testament to their crimes. Amy Lee nodded respectfully at David, then turned her gaze to me, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. "Mrs. Thornton," she said, her voice warm, "your husband was very proud of you. He knew you'd handle this with grace and strength." Julian looked from the boxes of evidence to Amy Lee, then to David, and finally to me, his bravado utterly shattered. He looked utterly defeated. Just give us some time," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "To decide." David looked at his watch. "You have 24 hours, he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "By this time tomorrow, I expect an email confirming your acceptance of the terms, or the criminal complaints will be filed." Serena, defeated and humiliated, stormed out of the room without another word, her expensive heels clicking angrily down the hallway. Julian, however, lingered, his eyes downcast, a flicker of something that looked like regret in their depths. I looked at him, the man who was once my stepson, the boy Arthur had loved. "You made your choice months ago, Julian," I told him, my voice quiet, final. "Not today. Not when you were caught. Months ago." He didn't respond, simply turned and slowly followed Serena out the door, leaving me alone with David and the mountains of evidence that had secured my future and dismantled theirs. 22 hours after the dramatic confrontation in David Miller's office, my phone rang. It was Julian, his voice strained, a pathetic shadow of his usual confident self. "Eleanor," he began, "Serena and we need to talk. Can we come over?" I felt a surge of cold satisfaction. They were desperate. I allowed them to come, but on my terms. "You have exactly 30 minutes, I told him, my voice firm, "and don't bring any papers. Just yourselves." I wanted to see their faces, stripped of their arrogance, before they made their final choice. They arrived promptly, their demeanor a stark contrast to their earlier bravado. Serena, the impeccable Chanel suit now looking somewhat wilted, carried none of her usual imperious confidence. Her eyes were downcast, her shoulders slumped. Julian, his face pale and etched with sleeplessness, couldn't bring himself to meet my gaze, his hands clasped nervously in front of him. They looked like two children called before the principal, utterly defeated. I led them into the living room, the scene of so many happy memories with Arthur, now tainted by their deceit. I remained standing, asserting my dominance. "So," I began, my voice even, "you wanted to talk. What is there to say that Arthur hasn't already laid bare?" I looked from Julian to Serena. Every lie you concocted, every dollar you stole, every vile plan you made to have me declared incompetent and locked away in sunny hills. Arthur knew it all. He recorded it all. He documented it all. Julian finally looked up, his eyes pleading. "Eleanor, please. It wasn't like that. We were just doing some contingency planning. For Arthur's future. For the estate's protection." My voice, usually soft, rose with a sudden, unexpected force. "Contingency planning?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. What part of embezzling nearly $500,000 was contingency planning? What part of plotting to frame me for reckless spending was contingency planning? What part of researching Alzheimer's symptoms to make me appear insane was contingency planning? What part of any of that, Julian, was love? What part of it was family? The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. I leaned forward, my gaze piercing. "Let's be clear about your contingency plan. Julian, it included years in prison. For you, and for Serena. For grand theft, for credit card fraud, for conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Amy Lee's evidence is irrefutable, and Arthur ensured that every single charge would stick. The reality of their predicament, stripped of any pretense, finally seemed to hit them with full force." Julian's shoulders shook. He lowered his head, and I heard a muffled sob. I'm sorry, Eleanor," he choked out, his voice thick with what sounded like genuine remorse, or perhaps simply fear. "Sorry?" I asked, my voice devoid of warmth. "For which part, Julian? For stealing from your father and plotting against me? Or just for getting caught?" Serena, ever the manipulator, finally found her voice, tinged with a desperate edge. "Eleanor, you can't do this. You're destroying your own son." "What would Arthur say?" "Arthur," I stated calmly, "said nothing. He did. He gathered the evidence. He made the choice. He simply empowered me to deliver his final message." I took a step back, gesturing towards the door. "Your 30 minutes are up. You have a decision to make. Make it elsewhere." They looked utterly defeated. Serena, her face now blotchy and tear-streaked, rose slowly, her usual defiant posture completely gone. Julian followed, his head bowed, unable to meet my eyes again. They shuffled out of the house, their footsteps heavy, leaving behind a silence that felt clean, pure. The toxic air they brought had finally cleared. Later that evening, after the dust had settled and the reality of Arthur's brilliant plan truly sank in, I found myself in his study. The room, once a painful reminder of his absence, now felt filled with his presence, his foresight. I remembered David Miller's parting words, relayed from Amy Lee. Arthur said there was something special, just for you, under a loose floorboard in his study. My heart fluttered with a tender anticipation. I searched carefully, running my hand along the polished oak. Near his favorite armchair, I found it. A slightly raised section of the floorboard. With a gentle pry, it lifted, revealing a small, intricately carved wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were dozens of letters, tied with a simple satin ribbon. They were love letters from Arthur, written during his illness, each one a testament to his enduring affection, his profound love, and his unwavering belief in me. He had poured his heart out, knowing his time was limited, knowing I would need these words to carry me forward. Among them was a final, longer letter, addressed to me, written in his familiar hand. He expressed his immense pride in me, how he knew I would be strong, how he trusted my judgment. He also spoke of his pain over Julian, a profound sorrow for the path his son had chosen, but urged me not to let bitterness consume me. "My dearest Eleanor," he wrote, "this is your new beginning. Embrace it. You are worth protecting, worth cherishing, worth fighting for. Live the life we dreamed of, the one you deserve." The next morning, David Miller called. Julian and Serena had accepted the terms. No contest, no further contact. They had chosen silence over ruin. 6 months later, my life was transformed. I had sold the sprawling estate, a place too large for one, and moved into a beautiful, smaller home with a vibrant garden, filled with light and Arthur's memories. The initial grief for Arthur had matured into a quiet, enduring love and a profound respect for the man he was. I had begun volunteering at a local art center, rediscovering a passion for painting I'd long suppressed. A significant portion of Arthur's inheritance had been used to establish a scholarship fund in his name, specifically for students pursuing ethics in business, a subtle nod to the lessons his own children had failed to learn. I was even preparing for my first solo art show, fittingly titled Late Bloomer. My life, once seemingly shattered, was now vibrant, purposeful, and entirely my own. A testament to Arthur's love and my own resilience.